I know I'll win over time. That doesn't mean I'll beat everybody else or anything like that. But I mean, the game is very, very, very easy if you have the right lessons in your mind about what you're buying. I'm not buying stocks. I'm buying pieces of overwhelmingly American business. And I'm happy when that's when I'm doing it. I'm happy when stocks are going down. I'm happier when stocks are going down because I can buy more of them with the same amount of money. I'd be happy if I was a farmer. I'd want farmland to go down so I could buy more acreage. If I was, it just makes sense. And I'll tell you the second thing I really like. I like being trusted by people. And, I would rather do what I do with partners than do it sitting in a room myself, even though I might make more money that way.
You like the idea that people are trusting you with their savings.
Yeah. They just say, look, I've saved money, I don't know what to do with it. And
I trust you.
And they give it to me. And they don't, most of them give it to me, certainly in the original days, but even now to an unusual degree, give it to me with the idea that it's for the lifetime. And then most of them, they've done this a long time ago, most of them give it away when they get through. They never quit saving. And of course, I'm sort of their savings machine.
They save it and then give it to you.
Yeah, and then they say, keep it, and just keep building it. And they don't do it with the idea they're going to retire when they're 65 and then build great castles or anything like that. They just are basically, a few do. A few spend some money later on. But overwhelmingly, if they've been saving when they were 25 and saved a little money and gave it to me, they're still saving. There were 11 doctors that we met at a hilltop house. There was one friend of mine named Bill Angle, and he was trying to get these other doctors to join with me. So I don't know what it was, 1958 or 9. He invited 12 doctors to this dinner at the hilltop house. He had me come, and he basically said, "This is my friend Warren, and if you got any brains, you'll give him some money." And so we spent the evening, and these guys were all probably in their low 30s, and 11 of the 12 put in $10,000 each. The 12th said to Bill, he said, "Well, what happens if we lose our money?" And my friend Bill, never forget it, he said, "Well, dummy," he says, "we'll form another partnership." That was the guy that didn't invest. He got reminded of this by the other 11 for the rest of his life. And those people stuck with me. And one of them died in the last year. It's a friend of mine to the end, at 101. And his name was Stan Truls, and he came from a little town, about 300 people near Omaha. And he became an ophthalmologist and a super wonderful guy in every way. He helped all those fellow doctors, and you couldn't find a finer guy than Stan. But 2 of the other 11, 2 of them are still alive. And the money, and the amount of money, they haven't built, they could have done anything. They could have lived bigger than anybody in Nebraska, but they went with the lives they liked. And
so have you.
Yeah.
So have you.
Yeah.
You live in the same house you've lived in for...
I've lived in the same house. I bought it in 1958. So 63 or 64 years. Quarter of the life of the country. I've lived a quarter of the life of the country in one house. And I like being 5 minutes from the office, too. Just think if I'd had a 35-minute commute. I've gone to the same office now since January of 62. So it's been 60 years, and let's say I save 30 minutes every day in commute, each way.
Let me turn to the stockholders letter that you wrote for 2021.
Well, that letter was, I started that letter in my head I've already started next year's letter in my head. But I start that letter in my head, we'll say.
Because you can begin to see what
Oh,
2020
I know what I'm going to write about it, and then I just have to, it keeps forming. But that isn't a newsletter that comes out, it's what I want to talk to I was forged it originally in terms of my sisters who had practically all their money in Berkshire. They trusted me 60 years ago, and they just put it all in, and they're very smart. My older sister Doris died here recently, but both of them very, very smart and interested in financial matters, but they're not a nut like me. And so they got other interests too. Basically, they've handed me all their money, and they don't want to hear day to day.
So you tell them what's happened in the last year.
Once a year, it's like I sit down with them and tell them, here's what might be interesting to you, and I'm doing that all year in my mind, and I've done it. I know what I'm going to talk about next year unless something changes in a dramatic way.
Can you tell me what that is?
No. But I can tell you this. Last night, I went to Music Man, and among the people who went with me was my friend Carol Loomis. Carol was 92.
She's a great journalist and a good writer.
She starts editing. I send her the report, which I think is perfect always at the time. I sent her the report in usually December, and she keeps sending back, and she kind of won't let me send it out without checking to make sure that I haven't left out a comma someplace or
so
right up to the end. But so the report, although it's dated February 20th, that report basically was written. It was written in my head for a long time, but it was what I thought was finished probably in December. And then Carol tells me there's a lot of work to do.
No big investment in 2021 because you didn't see anything that met your requirement.
Yeah, and I wrote the report, and people can go to berkshirehathaway.com and they can see exactly what I think and have thought for 40-some years of each report.
But for you to make a big investment, what do you need to know?
I need to know that I think that Berkshire Hathaway is going to be worth more money someday down the road. Not tomorrow. I want it to go down if I'm buying something. And I would say this: the world has changed a lot since that report was written. But the world changed a lot in 2000, 2 years ago when the pandemic. Just think about it.
Because the pandemic.
The pandemic. It's almost exactly 2 years later. An event happened 2 years ago, and we didn't know exactly what it was. We didn't know what the financial result would be. We didn't know what the physical result would be. We just didn't know. But when I wrote my report in February, I didn't know the pandemic was going to hit, a week later. And I didn't know that the American financial system was on the brink of, chaos. A few weeks later, and if somebody wants to read a great book that just came out, it's a sensational book called $1 Trillion Triage that tells on a day-by-day basis what was going on in March that, where in my opinion, Jay Powell